Who am I? I saw and heard prayers on my trip to God. Grand prayers were said on my behalf by a loved one before God. At 34, after giving birth to a beautiful kid, I experienced a 20-minute near-death and out-of-body experience in 2019. A tubal ligation caused problems and 52 days in the hospital. The perforated bowel gave me numerous mental and physical issues. Telling my story helps me connect, motivate, and give hope to those going through similar experiences. My story is meant to be shared at life after birth. My resilience allowed me to deliver babies at 16, 32, and 33 without difficulties. I always recovered from my health issues and returned to leaping out of aircraft, climbing mountains, traveling, and living my best life with my princesses. I wanted to return to my dream work at the Arkansas Heart Hospital and earn my Bachelor of Science in Health Information Technology at the University of Arkansas for Medical Sciences. Last time, after having birth, changed my life forever. My newborn spent up to 6 months with her family. As I fought for every breath, my 16-year-old cared for her 1-year-old sibling, and my family was at my bedside every day. Imagine hopscotch. It's a fun, traditional game that reminds me of jumping on number squares. Snap a finger and hopscotch is yours. Hopscotch transformed my life. A single double and double problem was in each square. You can now visualize this idea. Despite my mental and physical exhaustion, I heard my mother's pleas, my father's scream, and my sister's despair for me to survive. Since I wouldn't quit, I suffered test after test and surgery after surgery. My faith was tested like never before, yet I persevered and now see God's promises for my life. My surgery scars are awful. However, they remind me every second how close I came to death, and I'm glad. My scars allowed me to share a new path with the world. I thank God for sending me angels on July 22, 2019. Atelectasis and lung collapse were found on a CT scan 2 days following surgery. My right colon had a lot of feces, colonic ileus, intestinal blockage, and intraperitoneal free air on July 23, 2019, indicating perforation. I had an NG tube in my nose for feeding and gastric decompression after surgery. I refused a second NG tube implantation since it was so unpleasant. On July 26, 2019, 6 days after surgery, life-threatening diseases and infections appeared. I complained of being hot despite the freezing room. Not even lying next to the air vent cooled me. The heat suffocated my bones and organs, making me feel like I was burning up. Everyone was confused except my sister, who, with her medical training, suggested the physicians check for infection. I doubted I would see daybreak. I nearly died. My mother fought for me that night and got me help. A contrast-enhanced CT abdomen and pelvis showed increased fluid and air, suggesting perforation. Emergency exploratory surgery was scheduled immediately. The surgeon saw a return of free air, a substantial amount of succus juice, and a 0.5 centimeters bowel lesion during tubal ligation on July 20, 2019. My intestine was washed to check for further punctures after several interloop abscesses were removed. A wound VAC and 2 drains were implanted in the incision due to infection risk. 1 drain was behind my swollen uterus and 1 in my tiny bowel. Cultures showed life-threatening Klebsiella oxytoca, Streptococcus aeruginosus, and Enterococcus hyrae infections. After days of untreated illnesses, my bloodstream and organs were attacked, causing sepsis. Still in ITU on my 34th birthday, August 16, 2019, I was diagnosed with acute hypoxic respiratory failure, acute renal failure, and congestive heart failure with an EF of 10 to 15%. I needed 2 blood transfusions on August 29th and September 3rd, 2019, due to anemia and terrifying epistaxis, nosebleeds. X-rays showed bilateral pulmonary infiltrates, indicating pneumonia in both lungs, worsening my health. I knew pneumonia would kill me. I was on numerous antibiotics and BiPAP for oxygen. I walked slowly with help, and nurses adjusted me hourly to reverse pneumonia and reduce bed sores and back pain. 3 days later, my pneumonia in both lungs subsided. The doctor who said I was overmedicated was probably right. My pain was treated with morphine, oxycodone, and others. These drugs saved me during abdominal wound VC changes and dressings. The fragrance of my flesh and seeing deep into my abdomen changed my life forever. The day before discharge, August 28, 2019, was usual. My sister visited me on her way home from work and was kind. I got tons of love and support from my sister, a future LPN and hospice aide, and my diligent mother, a housekeeper. We sang praise and worship, joked, and watched TV. My excitement about going home the next day was immense. She said, "See you later, sis. I love you. We'll pick you up in the morning." I missed her immediately and was restless, glancing at the time. Ironically, staring at the clock made time fly by. A team of physicians and nurses came into my room as if it were an emergency, shocking me. The heart monitoring team told them to hurry to me. Since I was cognizant, the doctor asked how I felt. Before responding, my heart stopped and I went into VT cardiac arrest. My spirit left my body instantly, and I felt myself departing my body. I briefly heard code blue and watched life-saving procedures. I didn't feel the CPR that cracked my ribs or the 5 cardiac shocks since I didn't feel pain. It felt like Sleeping Beauty's deep, blissful sleep. I realized that my body was on the hospital bed, but I was in a different place. I thought, oh no, I just died, in shock and fear. A soothing blanket of tranquility enveloped me quickly. Rest assured, I would be okay. Being immortal and gliding toward a warm, inviting light being in a dark tunnel seemed like superpowers. I felt feather light and floated smoothly toward the light. I couldn't look away. I was captivated when the dark tunnel evolved into rays of vivid light in futuristic colors, and the area around and beyond me was boundless. Then I heard the most wonderful, tranquil music. The closer I was to the light, the deeper my relaxation seemed. I felt valued, loved, connected, and equal. I felt forgiven and grinned, not anxious, stressed, hungry, thirsty, or in discomfort. No concept of time. I was relaxed as I approached God. I briefly saw and heard prayers as if I were passing them by, receiving gifts and smiling. All of this, for me, is also like it, so I know God hears prayers. Maybe I didn't know who was praying, but I felt each prayer belonged to me. Great prayers, I think more is better when someone prays for you. Someone close pleaded my case to God. I think it was my grandfather, whom I loved and missed. Finally, I entered a garden and noticed a flower. It stood out in the valley like a burgundy to crimson lily. Life and vitality flowed through the translucent flower stalk. This was my paradise sight. What followed was a fog, because this experience was beyond my comprehension. Whether I stayed or returned is unclear. I think my obstinate side wanted to stay, but my other side wanted to return to my babies and family. When I returned to my corporeal body, it seemed like time traveled backward. I couldn't turn around, almost like being sucked through a vortex. I sometimes feel like a stranger in my body, and my spirit is disconnected from it. I think elderly Shanice died on cardiac arrest day. My sister said she got the stress call to return to the hospital while being revived shortly before she went home. She didn't know what was happening, but it sounded horrible. She returned to the hospital quickly. My sister ran into my room to speak to the doctor. Seeing my sister's uniform, they thought she was a code blue worker. Doctor shouted, "You mean what?" "What's up?" she coded. My sister said my lifeless eyes sprang out of my eye socket. She spotted the apparatus and people around my corpse. In horror, she fainted. The doctor recognized my sister, helped her stand, and rushed her out. My parents were contacted while doctors worked for 20 minutes to revive me, and everyone stayed in a private area until I was stabilized. I didn't know I was in a coma to relieve brain and heart pressure. After 5 days intubation, I was weaned off the ventilator. Slowly, I improved, but strangely, I wasn't vegetative. Since I had been without oxygen, doctors weren't sure how much brain damage I had. I don't remember waking up, but I was informed I was in disbelief that I had died, and my heart had stopped. Unfortunately, certain dates remain unclear. I was told I was medicated to forget the trauma. God gave me memories of the near-death experience to preserve and share. With an EF of 25 to 30%, I was released to go home safely on September 11, 2019. Over 20 pills a day, a life vest, an IV milrinone for cardiac support, a PICC line in my chest, and the wound VAC were still in place. From September 14th to 17th, 2019, I was readmitted to a separate hospital for acutely worsening aphasia and stuttering, stroke-like symptoms. Brain volume reduction was seen on MRI. After a swallowing test, I could only eat purees. I tested positive for E. coli after discharge. I had SICD defibrillator installation on December 4, 2019. In 2019, I had tubal ligation, exploratory laparotomy to treat small intestinal injury, intra-abdominal abscess drainage, drainage placement X2, wound VAC placement to incision, abscessogram X4, EGD and PICC line placement. Multiple pelvic and ICD drains were placed. I remembered my out-of-body and near-death experiences a year later. I didn't know near-death experience existed. Recently, I was diagnosed with PTSD, which brought back memories and feelings. Hospitals, needles, and operating rooms frightened me. After brain injury, I overcome stroke-like symptoms such drooling, upper and lower extremity tremors while conscious, slurred speech, trouble swallowing, and walking. My bowels steadily normalized after treatment, but I lost memory and independence. I felt miserable, impotent, lost pleasure, anxious, and afraid to sleep. Medication also caused hair loss. I have good and bad days. Despite this, I graduated from cardiac rehab in 2020 from my former heart hospital and adjusted my diet. This made me feel accomplished. My recovery is monitored by a heart transplant specialist. Life is a sequence of moments, and the spirit passes through. Our spirit resides with God, not here. More than ever, I realize things are temporary. I've stopped keeping transitory items because everything has a season. I am inspired by my near-death and out-of-body experience most days. Finding your inner spirit outside your body makes it hard to adjust. 2 years later, I'm still processing. Despite my many daily medications, congestive heart failure doesn't define me. I want every minute with my kids and to inspire others. Love unlocks eternity. The video for today is over. Share your thoughts in the comments.